topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hi, welcome to my show, Learning to Dance in the Rain. This is Shelby Wagner, and I'm very excited about today's show guest, and I'll talk about him in a minute. I hope that if you have any questions for our guest expert, that you will type them into the program, and we'll see if we can get them answered for you. My guest today is Scptt Schober. And Scott is a top cybersecurity expert, presenter, wireless expert, and author of top-selling cyber security books. He's appeared in Bloomberg TV, Good Morning America, CNN, Fox Business Channel, NPR, and more to weigh in on the latest cybersecurity issues of the day. He is the CEO of Berkeley Veritonic Systems, a wireless engineering company that specializes in testing, security, safety, and cybersecurity solutions. And boy, I am very interested in hearing about this subject today. So welcome, Scott. Come on out here. Join me.
How you doing there, Shelby? Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, golly, thank you so much for coming and being on my show. I enjoyed the interview that we did a few weeks ago on Cyber Magazine, and I'm looking forward to today's too.
Yeah, same here.
So, would you like to start by telling us a little bit more about yourself or how you got interested in cyber securities?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm running a 52-year-old family business. We make wireless threat detection tools. Many of our tools and offerings are really to combat cybercrime and wireless threats against U.S. DoD agencies and other companies. So we're busy in the trenches fighting. But my background, really about sixth grade or so, I grew up in the family business and just surrounded by electronics, surrounded by design, engineers. My background from a formal schooling was really in computer science. I went to Kane University for undergraduate studies and then to New York University and continued learning. I'm always following trends and technology and innovation and trying to always develop the latest and greatest technologies to combat the cyber criminals. And it's been a lot of fun. And we're a small group, just under 30 employees, and we've got some nice niche tools that we've developed. And in the process of it, I educate a lot of people. So I talk about cybersecurity and security in general, how to keep safe. A number of years ago, unfortunately, I got a target on my back, talking and educating people, and they went after myself personally, as well as my company. And it started simply with my credit card compromised, debit card, both again, personally and the company, Twitter account hacked, our website, our online store where we do a lot of commerce got hacked. We got repeated DDoS attacks. Eventually, I realized something's wrong here. And then our checking account, we had $65,000 stolen. And I said, oh boy, this is not good. Long fight, a lot of letters, phone calls, became a federal investigation. So I learned a lot about what it's like when you're targeted and when you're scammed and the process of it. We did get all our money back eventually. And I've tried to use this as an opportunity from the mistakes I've made to share with others what you shouldn't do. And kind of similar story to you. Sometimes when we go down that difficult path and we learn by trial and error, make mistakes, we get stronger ourselves, but we can also share that with others so they too don't traverse that same path that we went. And I've been doing that recently. Unfortunately, I had my identity was compromised, dealing with that cleanup and mess still. So it's been a long, difficult battle. It doesn't go away. But I think it just makes me more determined to fight against these cyber criminals and say, hey, they're not going to win. If enough people like yourself and myself and others in the community of cybersecurity will fight back and educate one another, we can make a difference. So that's part of my mission, I think I could safely say, and I'll continue to do that with help from other great experts like yourself and many others out there.
Oh, well, we're nice to have you on board, and I'm very, very happy to have you here with me today. Is there, well, when I was writing my book, Scams, I found out there were like thousands of scams out there and new ones happening every day. And I was very interested when I got your book, Senior Cyber, and that at least I had the correct information because it kind of agrees with your book. So would you like to talk about your book, Senior Cyber? Why did you pick seniors to write about?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Interesting. I think I spent a lot of time helping my mother and father a number of years ago, just with computers and passwords, and then helping them help my grandfather. My grandfather was 99 years old at the time, and he was always a technologist. He worked for 40 plus years at Bell Labs in Murray Hill. So he was really an engineer and very technical and a brilliant man, along with my father. And starting to see, as your parents get older, your grandparents get older, they need help with things technological, such as the internet and passwords and logging on and phones and computers, so on and so forth. So I started doing some research, and I say, geez, every weekend I'm trying to help them. There's got to be a good guide or a book out there that'll help them. So I started doing research and looked at a couple, went to the bookstores and the libraries and things, and everything I read, I was a little bit discouraged because it talked down to seniors. It almost talked to them as if they were childish or not intelligent. And I kind of stepped back and I said, this is a little insulting. I said, the generation before my generation and before that generation were hard workers, good work ethic. They were very knowledgeable. They figured things out. Maybe they didn't have as many technological distractions as a younger generation, my generation, or even my kids' generation. I said, but there's nothing really put out there that helps them. It's more discouraging. So I said, I'm going to go on a quest, and I'm a self-published author, so I wrote 2 books already. And I said, I'm going to write a book on senior cyber and try with the goal to hopefully make it an easy read, cover some of the complex issues, but distill it, break it down to make it easy to understand, make it a big, large font. And the first thing when I started talking to others, publishers and copy editors, they said, no, that's, you got to make it a small font. Nobody wants a big font in a book. Mistake. And I said, well, I disagree. I said, my eyesight's starting to go. I'm going to make it bigger. And it was almost a fight with different people. And I finally won. And I said, your book, ultimately, you could do whatever you want, but this sells more than this and that. And I said, you know what? I don't care about the sales. I care about making something that's going to be informative to the senior, to empower them so they embrace the internet, computers, technology, and they don't have to be embarrassed. So I try to draw that corollary in some of the examples I give throughout the book. Maybe when a senior had their first telephone, maybe it's an old rotary dial telephone, or maybe the first TV or things like that, things that I'm hoping that they could relate to. And in the process of it, the joy I found was I got to interview a lot of different seniors. My grandfather at the time was living at a senior center, so we were there every week visiting him. I thought that was kind of interesting, not just myself, but even the younger generation. My daughter and son went with us, my wife and I, as well as my parents. So it was kind of neat to see all the generations. And oftentimes we were joking around something on the computer. My grandfather loved trading stocks. He was a ham enthusiast. So a lot of the technology, I think, that was out there, finding ways to simplify and assist him, is what I tried to steer toward the book. So it was a great journey. I loved it, had a lot of fun. And it required a lot more research than I would think. I'm used to doing research for traditional. My first book, Hacked Again, and my second book was Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business. I had to do more research on stats and facts and things that relate to everyday businesses. or the hacking community and things that are a little bit deeper dive. But I realized I needed to learn and get up to speed to look at it from a different vantage point, look at it from a senior's vantage point. So I was correctly expressing myself. And I had a lot of seniors even read it before I would release it to make sure they felt comfortable with it. So hopefully I did an okay job, and I was seeing great
I think you
sales.
did a wonderful job.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah, I was reading right along, and I liked the larger print. And someone just wrote in that they really liked the larger print
Oh,
too.
good. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback there, because
Yeah,
that
we
was
have
really a sticking point that I'm surprised that I'm sorry, that the community is just pushes back. Everybody wants a book a certain size and number of pages and font size, and I don't think there's one size fits all when it comes to publishing a book. I think you have to really focus on your audience, number one, and then maybe some of those other things come into play.
Yeah, right. This person's interested in knowing, was it easy to self-publish?
Oh, great question. You know what? I was scared to death. My first book, Hacked Again, I was reluctant, and I should tell the brief backstory. I'm not a good writer. I really didn't
Oh, I
present
think you're
much
really
back
good.
then. I had to learn how to write. I had to learn. I'm a technology guy. I'm on the computer all day long, so it took me a while. It took me about 2 years to self-publish Hacked Again. But guess what? It taught me the craft of writing and helped me appreciate there's a lot more to it than just sitting there pounding away at the keyboard. You have to write, rewrite, throwing chapters out, bounce it off smarter people than yourself. I have my brother. He is a good writer. He's a partner in the business too. And I bounced every chapter off him. He would edit it and get back. And the good news is when you have somebody you know and trust, I grew up with him, so he kind of knows what's going on in my head. He knows the story that I'm telling. Maybe he
Mhm.
was part of the story or heard it already. So that
Right.
really helps in the editing process. So I encourage people, surround yourself with people smarter than you, better at writing than you, and that are honest with you. I've had a couple, I even put it there, two girls I really appreciated that helped with some of the copy editing and the flow of the manuscript initially. And they were brutally honest, and they said, "No, Scott, this isn't going to fly. You got to go back and rewrite this. These chapters, rewrite, refocus, simplify, take the techno jargon out of it." So I really had to learn how to do that in the course of 2 years, and I spent most of my vacations and late nights doing that. It took me longer than I thought, but guess what? Once I got it, then the second book took about 9 months. Cybersecurity is everybody's business. Senior Cyber took about 6 months, start to finish. So I highly encourage people, consider self-publishing, especially now with Amazon. It greatly helps. And with all three of the books that I've done, and now working on book number 4, I did all the formats: softcover, hardcover, audiobook, and ebook. I think it's worth it. Why? Because again, it gets you to all the audiences. Let your audience decide what format they want to digest it in, and it really helps. And for me, in the business of cybersecurity, I look at a book as kind of a business card. When I take that book and I got to go onto a TV interview or radio or have a conversation on a great podcast like this, I like to send a book ahead of time. Let the host review it, and they get to know me a little bit. So I encourage people, self-publish. You can do it, and be generous with your book. Give it to everybody and anybody. Don't worry about losing sales. Just focus on getting it out there.
Well, I really appreciated it. You sent it to me, and I
Yeah.
read it, and this I loved. It's an activity booklet that goes along with it, and meant for your kids to do some of the exercises with you, coloring, and I believe that's a crossword puzzle
Hmm.
somewhere in here. And wow,
Exactly.
my grandson, he can hardly wait to get to that book and help me fill it
Yep.
out.
Yeah.
So
And,
I
and
think I learned a lot from the materials that you sent me after
oh,
you
good,
interviewed
good.
me before. So yeah,
Yeah.
um, there's the activity book she's got up there
Very
now.
nice. Yep.
Pit
Yep.
your wits against, what does it say? Pit your wits against these cybersecurity challenges. I wanted to say, when you mentioned about when they're 80-year-old, they get a pat on the back and whatever. When my mother reached 80, I wanted to give her a surprise birthday party. I thought, wow, this is, really something. She says, no way. And I said, well, what do you mean, no way? And she says, because I don't want anybody to know that I'm 80 years old. And I thought, well, they're going to know how old I am, so they're going to put it together, Mom, But then when I reached 80, I realized, oh, yeah, yeah,
Yep.
I know now what she meant. It's kind of funny that sometimes we don't really pay attention to what our parents tell us, and maybe we should.
Yep. You got to listen better. Exactly. Yes.
There was another statement, I think you might have answered a little bit. It says, what brought you to writing? Was it, in the first place? What brought you to writing in the first place?
That's actually a good question. It goes back to, actually, I'll never forget the day. I was in New York City in Manhattan. I was actually doing a TV interview on a cybersecurity breach on Bloomberg television. I just finished up and I was like, whew, whooped. I walked into a little restaurant, sat down and I said, I'm going to have a martini just to relax a minute. And my cell phone rang and it was the Associated Press. And they said, hi, Mr. Schober, we heard that your company was targeted and you were the victim of a cyber attack. Can you go on record and talk about this? And I was taken back and I said, well, wait a second. First of all, how did you hear about this? How did you get my personal cell number? I said, this is like embarrassing. And they said, well, we have our sources and we heard and and they tracked me down somehow. And I said, well, it's a little embarrassing. We're a security company. We provide cybersecurity tools and wireless threat detections to keep the world safe. And here we are. We were targeted. And again, this goes back a number of years before it was very commonplace for companies and individuals to be hacked and targeted. So I'll be honest. I said, I'm very embarrassed. I said, but you know what? I said, I thought about it for a second here. And I will. I'll go on the record and I will talk about it with the provision that you let me explain the mistakes that I made and what I learned so other business owners don't do the same stupid things that I did. And they said, fair enough. We'll let you see the story before it gets published. So they interviewed me on the phone there while I sipped my martini. And it was less than an hour, I think. And they got all their information. They did send a draft over. I approved it. And the story went national. And it really went out there. And I think that in itself kind of put us on the map. And then I backed up from it. And I had a publicist at a time and a marketing company I was working with and my friends and family and relatives. Everybody kept saying, you've got some interesting stories here about your company getting hacked. Would you share it? Why don't you write a book? And I kept saying, oh, I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer. Finally, I caved and I said, okay, I'm going to try this. And that day I started putting pen to paper, and 2 years later, the first book was released, and it's been a blast ever since. So I think the encouragement from others around me. So if you hear enough people say, hey, you've got interesting stories, then you should consider writing a book. Because really a book is something that's your personal stories that makes it hopefully enjoyable. And then if you're sharing tips or encouragement or advice, that's weaved in there as well. But you got to make it enjoyable. Share stories. Stories help make reading enjoyable. That's what I learned.
Oh yeah, that's what and which one? Someone's asked your first book.
Hacked Again was my first book.
Hacked.
Yep, Hacked Again. Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Well, I think I saw that book several years ago before I ever met you, because I thought, okay, I got hacked once, hacked again, and so I was looking at it then. Where are your books available? Are they available on Amazon?
Yeah, they're certainly, all three are available on Amazon, all those different formats that I recently mentioned. And certainly you can, I think it's a Barnes and Noble bookstore and hundreds of other bookstores and online, you name it. I sell it even on my website, scottschober.com. I sell books every once in a while there too, but Amazon is 99% of where all books seem to be sold these days.
Right. And I suppose if they walked into Barnes and Noble, if they didn't know how to order it online at Amazon or whatever, if they walked into a bookstore, the bookstore will order it for them, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you go in fact, when I first went, I didn't see it. And then I asked them, and they said, oh, what's the, what is it called? ISBN number or whatever. What's the title? We could do it. And they ordered a few. I came back a week later and they had 6 copies there. And ever since they carry it. The other thing that's interesting, if you are a self-published author, which I found interesting in this journey when I was doing Hacked Again, they encouraged me this: if you want your book to be available in libraries, you can provide a copy to the Library of Congress, and there's some help that you can get to actually get it in libraries. So I said, well, let me try doing that. And I went to a local library and I asked them, could they help? And it was right here in Metuchen. And they said, sure, we'd be happy to assist you. And they recommended the library have some copies, and they bought some copies of it. I donated copies to the local libraries in my area as well. And then they said, would you like to come and speak on it? And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. I said, and so they put out the,
What?
Whoop, there we go. Sorry, I had a message pop up, but
Oh,
email.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, no worries. So I was kind of taken back and surprised, but it was a delightful crowd of local community members, young and old came, and I had little giveaways, and I signed copies of books, and some people bought it. And what I did was I said, any books that I sell, I would like to take the profits and donate it to the library because they were having an expansion project that was going underway. So sometimes working in your local communities, a community center, a senior center, a library, don't be cheap, be generous. If you make money selling books or get the word out, use that money and donate toward a cause. And that's what I did. And I found that to be very beneficial because now what happened, they mentioned to the groups, they were in groups of libraries throughout the state. They mentioned, hey, here's somebody that donated toward our library project. We recommend you pick up this book. Next thing you know, all these different libraries are buying my book. Another interesting experience when I first launched my book, I made contact with a professor. This was up in New York State. He taught at 3 different colleges. I sent him a copy of my book. We chatted a little bit. And he said, Scott, I like this book a lot. And he goes, I'm going to recommend this as regular reading for my course. And the professor taught an introductory computer science course. And for, I think, about 4 or 5 semesters, that was the recommended reading for all incoming freshmen that were taking computer science. And again, he worked at 3 different universities. So those respective Barnes & Noble bookstores on the campus would buy 100 to 200 of my books every semester. I was amazed. So you don't realize sometimes by being kind and generous and helping other people, giving books away and donating your time or donating books and things leads to larger sales. So as a self-published author, sometimes we focus too much on selling a book or books. Focus on helping people, educating people. And when you do that, it comes back in surprising ways. I'll give you another example. I started public speaking. I was speaking actually at a college and then a second college. And then I got brought into New York City, and a college said, oh, we'll pay you a speaking fee and some of your expenses. And I said, sure. And you could sell your book. So I did that. While I was there, I got another phone call, and they said, hey, would you come down to Virginia? Would you present? We need a keynote speaker and we'll pay you to present. So next thing you know, I started getting paid speaking opportunities surrounding my books. They would give me a little stand for free. I could sell the books afterwards, sign the copies. They would buy X number of them, usually 50 to 100 copies they would buy to give out to attendees. And usually attendees that register early for a show, they get a bag or they get a signed book or something else. So what does that do from the show? It provides them with an incentive to get attendees to register. That helps them. And they say, hey, the first 50 or first 100 people that register for our conference will get a signed copy of our keynote speaker's book, So if you get creative and work with events and shows, it will help you and reward you with more book sales. I think that's really key. And one other tip I always like to share with authors, whether you go through a publisher or even self-published, we sometimes forget the importance of reviewing a book on Amazon. I encourage people, I give copies of books out, and I say, if you enjoy the book, please share the good, bad, and ugly, and just give me an honest review. I really appreciate that on Amazon. Everybody doesn't do it, and I can't expect everybody to do it. But if you ask enough people, you start to get enough reviews. The more reviews you get, what happens? Amazon naturally bumps you up. So you sell more books, more people recommend it, reviews go up. And when you release book number 2, book number 3, book number 4, it does this kind of logarithmic growth, not linear. And that's what you want to see. So unfortunately, you got to be in it to win it and publish many books till you actually can start seeing some volume of sales.
Oh, that's very good advice for me even.
Yeah, for everybody. Yeah,
You know,
even for myself, I have to remind
the,
myself.
right.
Exactly.
I found the marketing and the publishing part of it was much more difficult than the writing part.
Yeah.
That's for me, that was a breeze, but oh my gosh, I've had a learning curve on the other
Yeah.
end.
Yep. It does take time. And I'll be honest, I had to learn too. However, I found the converse is true. For me, it was much harder to write the book
Uh-huh.
than the sales and marketing side. Again, because I'm running a company. When you're a business owner, you're selling every day. And I've
Yeah.
done probably, I don't know, several hundred trade shows for our products and our services over the years. So my
Uh-huh.
whole life, I've been, in a sense, doing sales and marketing. However, writing, I've never really, you write a blog, you write a simple letter, you do basics. Now, when you're trying to author a full blown book, I was like, wow, that's a lot of work. And it is. I give credit to authors. And I've read a lot of books. That's the other advice somebody gave me. One gentleman we did work for, he authored over 185 books at the time I spoke with him. And I asked him for advice. He sat me down, and he gave me some great tips and great things to do. And a lot of the things he mentioned helped me, and they still help me. He said, try speech to text. A lot of people don't realize that, but sometimes if I'm in the car and I have an idea, it'll pop in my head. I could just turn my phone on and just record, and then
Mm-hmm.
take my speech and transcribe it to text later. Then you clean it up. Don't worry about spelling and grammar and sentence structure and everything flowing just right. Get your thoughts from here to the computer or to the paper. The faster you can do that, the quicker your book comes together. And
Right.
so that's really a nice way to um, get it started and the process going. I've talked to 1,000 people at least that all wanted to author a book. In fact, I've even gone to Jacob Javits Center. I went to Chicago, a big book expo. I was invited because they said, could you share your advice on being a self-published author? And you were able to sell this many books and so on and so forth and make these different things. And it was great because I got to speak to an audience of authors. I said, you guys are experts out there more than I am. I'm learning this trade still, but I know how to sell a book and what works and kind of what doesn't. And I think that's really important to listen to both sides, from what makes a good book, the writing skills. You got to really perfect that and keep
Mm-hmm.
improving, never be happy where you are, but also understanding the sales and marketing side. Um, I think the other thing that people should consider, and you may have done this, you should consider it. If not, look at the genre for your book and just constantly reach out to everybody. For me, it was cybersecurity. So I reached out to everybody out there that writes magazines. And some to this day I met for the first time years ago when I released my book. I just wrote to them. I said, hey, I read a good article that you wrote in, Info Security Week or in Forbes or whatever else. I'd like to send you a copy of my book. And then what happens is, you look in Fortune magazine or Forbes or another publication, suddenly they independently, without even asking, they just wrote a review on your book. And you're
Oh,
like,
really?
this
Oh,
is
that was
fabulous. So sometimes you don't directly ask, can you review my book? You
mm-hmm.
just send them a thank you note. Thank you for taking a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy what you've done and do research on them, comment on their writings and their abilities. And that's fabulous. Because again, you're complimenting on their skill set. And in a sense, I'm not saying you're bribing them. It's not about bribing them or whatever, but it really does help for them to give back to you because you're giving to them. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to ask them other than, could you review it on Amazon or whatever else, and be honest. They'll repay you 10,000 times over, and that's beautiful.
I believe there was a compliment that just came across the screen. I read it real quickly. I like your lives. Yeah, I
Like,
liked your lives.
oh, okay.
That's nice. One question I read on the internet was a good question to ask was, "What is your morning routine?" And
Oh, my morning routine. Well,
I thought that was kind of personal, but they
no, that's
like
all
it.
right.
What
I
is your
don't mind.
morning routine?
I could tell you this, when it surrounded the writing, and maybe put it in context. If it's about running the business, I wake up early in the morning. I go to bed way too late at night. I probably go to bed about 1 o'clock this week, 1 o'clock, 2 a.m. So I need about 5 hours of sleep. It's probably not good. I don't want to recommend that for people, but that's me. I start out with coffee. I plan my day. I usually take a piece of paper and I write down, here's 3 things to 5 things I want to accomplish in my day. And if I can cross off a couple of those, I feel like there's a level of success at the end of the day. I'm probably a little bit of a workaholic because, again, running your own business, I'm here usually a little after 8 o'clock. I leave at 6 o'clock every night. Spend some time with my family when I get home, unwind a little bit, and then usually I jump on the computer, and a lot of international work because we have resellers around the globe. So I deal with them at night because I can't deal with them during the day. And typically there's time differences and things. So yeah, do I work a little bit at home? Yeah. Do I work on weekends? Yep. Am I too interconnected? Absolutely. Do I have to back off on that? Absolutely. I did get a boat a couple of years ago, a pontoon boat. We have a lake house. So when I go up there, I try to disconnect a little bit, like this weekend. And I think that's very important, especially for writing. I found if you have a place you can go that you feel comfortable, where you can relax, you can write much better. I can't write. I don't think I wrote at all in the office here. It's too distracting. I always have
I think so.
things to do and distractions between phones and paperwork and quotes and orders to post. And I'm very busy at the office from the moment I walk until I leave, and that it mentally exhausts you as well as physically. However, I could go up to our cabin up north. It's on a lake, helps you think, it helps you relax. And again, you don't have to have a cabin in a lake, but for me, that's what we happen to have, and that's the getaway. That helps me to think. And I typically would write in from about 10 p.m. on until I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. That was my sweet spot for thinking, and I'm awake and energized. And my family tended to wind down and they would go to bed, so I wouldn't be distracting them. I still had quality time with them, but I could concentrate on writing. So I think when you can almost schedule yourself, and it's hard to schedule the creative mindset to find time when you feel creative, because I don't always feel like writing. Everybody doesn't. And when you don't feel like writing, don't force it, because that's not good. What is good to do, I was encouraged to do this, and I agree. Where do you find your best moments to reflect on stories or things that you could relate to writing? For me, it's the shower. Don't ask me why. I'm in the shower. I'm kind of
You
rusty.
sing in the shower too?
I don't sing in the shower. Maybe I
Okay,
should.
so that's when you do your thing.
But find your place. Maybe it's in the car if you're a commuter. I have a 10-minute commute, so I don't have a whole lot of time to think. But find your place. Maybe it's when you stop off to get a cup of coffee. Maybe you go to the park or whatever, wherever your spot is. Thinking in your mind helps you actually write a book better. And then the frustration I found is I've got all these ideas and stories in my head. I got to get them out. And that's where speech to text helps. I grab my phone and I just ramble in it. Then I take that, pull it out, put it into text. Then I go back and clean it up later on, because it doesn't make a total sense. It does to me, but not to everybody else. But when you're relating it, I like to relate the feelings and the emotion that I recall at that moment. What did I feel like when I had $65,000 stolen out of my checking account? You know, what did I feel like when my identity was compromised? When you can express your emotion and explain it in a story, I believe personally it makes for better reading.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how many times I don't know about you, but I'll read a story and tears will be rolling down my eye. My cheeks. Or my husband used to come upstairs. He had his computer downstairs and he worked on, and I was watching his movie and I was crying. And, well, why do you watch a movie that you're crying for? I said, because it means it's a good one if I cry.
Exactly.
So the emotions have to be there. And they say in writing, a lot of times it's the first page or the first chapter of your book that catches their attention and keeps them going and keeps them reading. And wow.
Yeah, well said. That is true, I think. And I've opened up a lot of books. The other tip, I'm going to share this because it just popped into my head. You triggered something. The gentleman that wrote 185 books, he told me, he goes, Scott, he goes, you've identified the area you want to write in. And in my particular case, it was about, the first book was about hacking and cybersecurity and share tips to be safe. He goes, I want you to go to the bookstore, Barnes and Noble, and I want you to now go buy 10 books that attract you. And I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, if it's cybersecurity is what you're writing about, go to the cybersecurity section, pick the book up, flip it over, read about the author, read the introduction, look at the cover, what appeals to you, and go home with those 10 books. Now lay them out. Now critique them. And then out of those 10 books, pick the things that stand out the most and make sure your book has that level or better. In other words, a cover that engages and pulls you in, a good bio, a good intro, a good whatever. You want to shine because you got to look at you. There is competition. People look at your book versus somebody else's. Why would I buy Hacked Again or Senior Cyber over this other book? And it was kind of good advice because it also put me in tune with other authors when I read their book, their style, their conversational quality in the book. So that's important to do. I think if you're also doing an audio book, I was told by somebody, why don't you narrate it yourself and record it? So I tried a sample chapter and I listened to it and I said, I don't like myself narrating my own book. So then I went to somebody that was an expert in the field and they auditioned several people and I listened and I said, ooh, I like that voice. I want that voice to narrate my audiobook. So, it's good. You can't do everything yourself. Sometimes we think we're the best at something or I can do it or it's more personal. For some people, they can. I don't think my voice has got a good audiobook quality to it. That's my personal opinion. But, things to bounce off other people or think about and reflect upon when you're producing it. You obviously want to put out something that people enjoy and find useful. They benefit. If they can walk away, even I always say to people, if you walk away from that book and you learned a couple tips or you changed your pattern, your cyber hygiene, so you feel safer, you're a little more empowered. You maybe now you make a strong password. You don't reuse your password. You learn what multi-factor authentication is. You start to learn how to think a little bit more secure. Success. You are now safer than 10 other people on the block. And just like I always relate, and I do this in the books, a physical crime, someone approaches your house. What do they see? Do they see alarm stickers, an alarm sign on your lawn? Do they see a deadbolt? Do they see cameras? Whatever. If they see those things, maybe it's a barking dog. What are they going to do? A smart thief moves on to the next house. Same thing in the world of cyber. Cybersecurity is achieved in layers. So when I try to educate people, I share the different layers that they personally can apply in their lives to build up a strong cyber posture. When they can do that, and simple, and most of the things you can do, low cost or no cost, and it's really a cyber habit that you're forming. Once you start to form cyber habits, you're healthier from a cyber hygiene perspective, just like a diet or anything else, or physical security. So I always try to relate things to what people can relate to, common day things that they're already doing. They know eating healthy and 3 meals a day make them feel stronger and healthier. Same thing when you're doing cyber. You got to do it throughout your day, not just when you're at the office, but when you're at home, when you're on your smartphone. You got to do these, the basics at least to maintain that hygiene.
That's just in case there's someone wondering what the word cyber means. Could you explain briefly what cybercrime is or cyber?
Yeah, well, cybercrime is really, I try to simplify it and often think of from the standpoint of going to digital, the internet, computers, ones and zeros, if we get down to the lowest possible level. So somebody that's manipulating digital things. And that's really where a cyber criminal, it used to be a physical criminal. A bank robber comes in with a gun. They have a mask on. They rob a bank. Now that's all gone, right? Instead, they're getting on their computer. They're hacking into your account, getting your wire information, your account number, your routing number, your ABA number. They're manipulating passwords. They're trying to hack in. So they're using digital technology to invade your life, to steal money from you, to impersonate you, to socially engineer you, whatever the case may be.
Right. I saw something across the screen look like another compliment. Are you a YouTuber? Scott, do you have a YouTube channel?
Yeah. Actually, I've got a YouTube channel. I'm actually very active on YouTube. I put out a knowledge center videos, tip videos, videos on the books, my presentations I've put out there. Constantly putting out. I calculated a couple years back, and I know I've done well over 1,000 videos that I've put
Oh,
out there that were
wow.
just from an educational standpoint.
Mhm.
TV videos I've been doing probably for about 12 years now on the major networks, the small networks. So I do a fair amount. I actually created a small studio here. So if there's breaking news, like the other week when there was that huge IT outage, I got contacted by many different networks, and I just did breaking news and could break it down, simplify it, and explain some of that. And I think that's important. If you write a book, it's very important that not just you talk to other authors, but you talk to your audience. For my audience, it's consumers, it's business owners, anybody where cybersecurity affects their lives. So to me, being on the media, being on radio, being on great podcasts like this and educating and sharing what I've learned is very important, integral part of being an author, because you're educating, you're teaching, you're sharing. That's really fundamental. What I believe is what a successful author is. It's not just who you know and what channel you use to sell your books, because honestly, people don't want to buy just books. They want to get to know the author, get to know their stories, and learn something from it. So if you can kind of back up from it and look at the bigger picture sometimes and focus on that, you'll be a far more successful author, whether that's what you strive to be or not. But focusing on people and the problems and providing them with solutions and stories. Maybe it's entertaining, maybe it's funny sometimes or sarcastic. That's okay. Maybe it's emotional, as you said. But telling great stories to me is the fundamental premise of writing a good book.
Well, I don't know if Rebel can bring it back up there, but somebody said you are a good YouTuber. And
Oh,
so,
good to
uh,
hear. Yeah.
and I think they meant me too. So I thank
Yeah.
you for those very
Excellent.
much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
something else said hello. Thank you very much for the call. Uh, kind words from the audience. We've had more call-ins today than so far in my career.
Oh, that's great.
So I think that's wonderful. I hope I haven't missed anybody.
No,
Uh,
that's
on
great. And
this.
I always encourage Shelby, if anybody reaches out to you and they want a complimentary copy of my book, just tell them to send you the address and then shoot me over those. I'd be happy to mail it out. I really appreciate the
All right.
support.
And how did they get a hold of you?
They could say, if they go right to my website, scottschober.com, they could certainly reach out to me that way. There's a little form on there, info at
Okay.
scottschober.com, I think it is, or something like
All
that. But they
right.
click on contact. Yep.
And
And I send out all that stuff there. That's great.
mine is across the bottom, Shelby
Oh,
Wagner.
great. Yes. Yep.
But I think I've got just a few minutes on this. Is an important question
Fire away.
for me. The other day, I received an email that says, I have a project to share with you regarding your profile. And I wrote back, what is it about?
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if I should have done that. But the next letter came in and says, thanks for the report. And there's about 6 or 8 paragraphs. This person claims to be CEO and group chairman of the executive board of the HSBC Bank. And it's one of those letters where the owner, multi-millionaire, died without any heirs except that he has the last name of Wagner.
Yep.
And they're trying to find out whether I might be a recipient. Now, how would I check that out to see if that's real, or do I
Sure.
throw it away immediately?
Well, I mean, after a while, you get so comfortable looking at spam and scams and everything else. I usually can tell within about 10 seconds of reading it.
That's what I heard. Some people can do that. So
HSBC, that one is a very common one. I've seen that multiple times. But if you want to do more technical analysis, you can easily go up into the actual email and analyze the actual headers or the raw footage, and you could see the origin of the email. So you can verify, because it's easy to spoof an email. It's easy to put, your CEO of HSBC Bank or whatever the name is there. And it looks like that when it comes over your email. But when you dive in and look at the raw headers and look at the information, you see the actual origin of it to see if the email is spoofed or not. Usually you can learn how to identify a spoofed email in less than 5 minutes. A lot of great YouTube videos are out there to actually show you. I learned years back, and that'll tell you right away. So if it is a spoofed email, it's not from the person that it says it's from, just delete it. Don't even question it. To me,
Well, can you see a source on your email?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you analyze it. And just about any email program nowadays allows you to see the source of the email. So if it says on the top there, John Smith, and you think it's, at HSBC Bank or something like that. Now, when you actually dig in and look at it and you see it's, some wacky name at gmail.com, you're like, oh, wait a second. And oftentimes it's a Gmail or Yahoo or a freebie mail that they're using.
Yeah, this is a Gmail.
Yep. Guaranteed. It's
guaranteed.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All
There's
right,
a lot of other telltale signs too, but that's the basics, just so you don't even go down that path. See if it's addressed to you personally. Does it say Dear Shelby or Dear Miss Wagner or something like that?
Hello.
If it says hello, delete. That's what I do.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming.
Oh, thank you.
Being here with me again. I love talking with you. I learned so much.
Enjoyed it. Thank you for all you do and sharing your great stories too, and your podcast. It was an honor to be on there. And thank you, everybody, to your audience. And I just encourage everybody, stay safe.
Thank you very much. And Rebel, I thank you, my engineer backstage, and all of you that appeared to the audience today. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And thank you for writing in. I really appreciate that too. And I will see you, next week we'll be talking, oh golly, I've forgotten already, but I did it yesterday. It's a recorded one because I will be out of town. But thank you very much, and I'll say goodbye.